On Tuesday, September 16, 1879, the telegrapher at Fort Fred Steele handed over a message to Major Thomas Thornburg, the post's commander. After glancing over, Thornburg turned to his adjutant, Captain William Henry Bisbee, to deliver the news. The message ordered Thornburg to head out to the Ute White River Agency to look into an uprising against Agent Nathan Meeker. General George Crook's instructions made it clear. This mission was for investigation, not punishment. Fort Fred Steele, located more than 200 miles east of Rawlins, Wyoming, was the nearest military facility to the White River Agency in western Colorado. On September 29th, Major Thornburg led roughly 120 troops to Milk Creek, the agency's boundary, after leaving about 50 soldiers behind at Fortification Creek. None of Thornburg's men expected the fierce response that awaited them, despite earlier warnings from Ute chiefs Jack and Colorado along the trail, urging Thornburg not to bring his whole force into the Ute agency. The chiefs insisted only Thornburg and 5 others cross south of Milk Creek and promised to escort them to the agency to talk. Some of Thornburg's officers and scouts later recalled that, for reasons unknown, he ignored several suitable camp locations outside the reservation and crossed Milk Creek with 2 cavalry companies following reconnaissance patrols. This reckless decision infuriated Chiefs Jack and Colorado, who watched from Yellow Jacket Pass, outraged by the major's disregard for their warnings. Around 11:30 a.m. on September 29th, Lieutenant Samuel Cherry, leading Captain Joseph Lawson's 3rd Cavalry Scouts, tipped his hat toward the Utes in a peaceful gesture. Almost instantly, a rifle cracked from an unseen shooter. For a few tense moments, all was still. Then Yellow Jacket Pass erupted in a storm of gunfire. What no one knew was that 25 miles south, the Meeker massacre had already begun. By noon, Thornburg's entire expedition was in a fight for survival. Rifle fire poured down from a line of cedar trees, scrub oak, and serviceberry bushes at the base of Yellow Jacket Pass. Some soldiers later recalled the Utes had them outnumbered 3-1, judging by the sheer number of shots and smoke. The cavalry scouts, forced into retreat, fought their way back under the relentless hail of bullets. In order to cut off the cavalry from Lieutenant James V.S. Paddock's D Company, which was defending the wagon supply line on a near-level butte above Milk Creek, the Utes, who held the high ground to their left, swiftly maneuvered to flank them. As soon as Paddock heard the gunfire, he circled the wagons, a move that, along with the steady retreat of the forward troops, ended up saving their hides. But Major Thornburg wasn't so lucky. He lay dead somewhere in the sagebrush leading up to the tree line on Yellow Jacket Pass, his body left out there for 5 days. Captain J. Scott Payne, Thornburg's second-in-command, barely escaped death himself, catching a bullet in his side and shoulder. Payne's and Lawson's companies managed to reach the wagons just in time to avoid being overrun. For 6 tense hours, the fate of Thornburg's expedition hung by a thread. Some survivors and historians reckon that if the Utes had launched a well-coordinated full-force attack on the half-surrounded wagons and disorganized troops, the fight would have ended quick, favoring the Utes. But that moment slipped by. The soldiers pulled through by grit, discipline, and sheer nerve. The cavalry dismounted on the fly, firing from behind a makeshift barricade of wagons that formed a 3-sided circle. On the 4th side, a steep drop-off plunged more than 20 feet down to Milk Creek, leaving no escape. Teamsters scrambled to unhitch horses and mules, which soon became prime targets for the Utes. By the end of that day's fighting, over 300 draft animals and cavalry horses lay dead, most cut down in those first 6 brutal hours. This heavy loss foiled Ute Chief Colorado's plan to ambush the troops, drive them back to Fort Fred Steele, and force peace talks that would rid them of the detested Meeker. Amid the chaos of dying animals and whizzing bullets, the soldiers, following calm orders from their battle-hardened officers, unloaded the wagons, built up breastworks, and passed around ammo to hold their ground. Frustrated and running out of options, the Utes set fire to the bone-dry grass and sagebrush south of the wagons. A gusty southwestern wind drove the flames straight toward the corral, followed by a rush of Ute attackers. With the air thick with smoke, troopers shot blindly into the blaze, while Captain Lawson led some men over the barricades, beating back the fire with blankets, coats, and shovels. Though a few wagons caught fire, the soldiers managed to douse the flames and hold their ground. Up at the north end, Captain Payne took advantage of the same wind and set fire to the grass outside the corral. His aim was to burn away the cover the Utes were using to try and surround them and destroy a group of civilian wagons about 50 yards back so they wouldn't fall into Ute hands. Payne's plan worked. The Utes retreated into the hills, taking up positions above the road. As evening set in, the gunfire died down. Troopers set aside their carbines and grabbed shovels, burying the dead and digging trenches for the wounded. The smell of dead horses and mules filled the air, like a slaughterhouse, with bodies scattered around the wagons. Before nightfall, cold rations were handed out, and Payne gave strict orders: no fires, no lanterns, no candles. 4 men stepped forward to ride out for help that night, hoping to use the full moon expected around midnight on September 30th. Scout Joe Rankin rode nearly non-stop starting the night of September 29th, continuing through the next day and night, covering over 140 miles until he reached Rawlins around 1 a.m. on October 1st. General Crook received the telegram at Omaha Barracks about 2:25 a.m. Another message made its way to Captain Francis Dodge of D Company, 9th Cavalry. Leaving behind supply wagons full of food, medicine, and ammunition, he pushed south without stopping, arriving at the battle on October 2nd without facing resistance. His 30 Buffalo soldiers didn't shift the military odds much, but their presence lifted spirits. By nightfall, most of Dodge's horses had joined the others, dead on the field. Lieutenant General Phil Sheridan received Scout Rankin's urgent message, and by October 1st he had ordered General Wesley Merritt to lead a relief effort. Merritt, stationed at Fort D.A. Russell near Cheyenne, wasted no time. Within an hour, he'd gathered his troops, secured supplies, arranged railroad transport, and had a battle plan in place. What took Thornburg a week, Merritt accomplished in just a few hours. Leading 530 men, Merritt force-marched them 160 miles from 4 a.m. on October 2nd until 5:30 a.m. on October 5, without losing a single man or horse, a remarkable feat of military precision taught at West Point for years to come. Even before Dodge's company arrived, Chief Jack had started telling his warriors they could leave without any shame. Colorado swung between being aggressive, complacent, and resigned. The arrival of an Ute messenger from Chief Ouray, bringing an order to cease hostilities, put an end to any further discussion. Riding out to greet Merritt, he waved a flag of peace. The chaos was over. The battle had its winners and losers. However, significant challenges still loomed ahead. First and foremost was the rescue of 3 white women and 2 children, the only survivors of the Meeker massacre. Second on the list was capturing the Ute leaders believed to be responsible for the murders of 11 male civilian workers at the White River Agency and for the ambush of the White River Expedition. With the help of Chief Ouray at the Los Pinos Agency, former Ute agent Charles Adams successfully convinced the Utes to release the Meeker captives on October 21st. After meeting with the Utes to get their viewpoint, Adams wrote to the government, "I believe that all of this trouble could have been avoided if Major Thornburg had gone to the agency with just an escort. The group of young men under Jack went out to fight without the knowledge of the older chiefs, and the loss of so many young lives stirred up the rest, making the killings at the agency inevitable. I believe the attack on Thornburg was planned, and the leaders involved should face consequences." Meanwhile, newspapers catered to their readers' prurient interests, spinning tales about the captives' fates. Both Josephine and her mother claimed their Ute captors forced them into sexual acts and fanning the flames of anti-Ute sentiment. Despite the scandal surrounding her, Josephine rose above it, recounting her experiences in a series of lectures that were described as vivid and engaging. Tragically, her life was cut short. She passed away just 3 years after the battle at the age of 25 due to a lung infection. Her mother, who had also been taken prisoner with Josephine, inscribed on her gravestone, "Brave daughter, who with me escaped horrible death at the hands of thy noble father's slayers. As I see the sands of life slide away, a cunning adversary has taken your lovely fresh breath." Some researchers assert that a higher percentage of soldiers received the Medal of Honor at Milk Creek than at any other battle in American history, with 11 out of 175 awarded. Congress recognized more acts of bravery at Milk Creek, distributing at least 30 commendations, more than in any other battle during the Indian Wars. 13 Army soldiers and civilians lost their lives. while 44 were wounded. Chief Jack believed that his 300 to 400 warriors suffered almost similar numbers of Ute casualties. 2 inquiries took place, one at the Los Pinos Agency and another at the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. But neither was able to determine guilt for the Meeker Massacre or the Battle of Milk Creek. The committees concluded that the Milk Creek battle was a minor conflict between 2 sovereign nations. As the Meeker Massacre occurred on federal land, Colorado's criminal laws did not apply. However, as miners flocked to the San Juan, settlers began eyeing lands north of the mining region that had been allocated to the Utes in the treaty. By September 1881, just a year after Ute Chief Ouray passed away at the age of 47, all Colorado Utes had been forcibly removed to Utah. These days they reside in the southern Ute and Ute Mountain Ute reserves, which are bordered by Colorado and New Mexico.